The girl accidentally fell from the rooftop. The next second, the sky suddenly opened up with heavy rain. The building was instantly submerged. When the dark clouds cleared, the entire building was somehow floating on the surface of the sea. Because of this, the girl managed to escape death. Her companion said in shock that the entire town had suddenly vanished. Before everyone could even process what had happened, another building drifted toward them from the distance. They quickly shouted for help, but no one responded at all, and all their phones had no signal. They couldn't contact the outside world. The whole building was like a lone boat in the middle of the sea. Whether it was a distress signal or the walkie-talkies, they tried every possible way, but by the time the sun began to set, no one had come to find them. Panic instantly spread among the group, but the girl seemed to have been prepared all along. She had stocked the cabinets with a huge supply of instant noodles. There were countless drinks and snacks. Then, in a quiet voice, she told everyone that this wasn't the first time she had experienced something like this. The girl's name was Tanai. After her parents divorced, she moved into this apartment building with her mother. Because her mother was always busy with work, she often asked the old man next door to look after Tanai. It was there that she met the old man's grandson, Kosuke. The two quickly became inseparable friends. The old man would always joke about wanting Tanai to be his granddaughter-in-law. Almost all of Tanai's childhood was spent in the old man's home. Those days were the happiest time of her life. Later, when the apartment building was scheduled for renovation and demolition, she had no choice but to move out with her mother. Not long after, the old man suddenly passed away. This was a huge blow to Tanai. She missed him dearly. She missed the happiness of her childhood even more. So whenever she had free time, she would go back to the old apartment building alone. Because everyone said the place was haunted, Tanai thought that if ghosts really existed, she would surely be able to see her grandfather there. Until one day, Kosuke and his classmates came to explore the building. When he returned to his old home, he discovered Tanai sleeping inside the closet, still half asleep. She muttered something about Napo. Everyone immediately asked who Napo was. Realizing her little secret had been exposed, Tanai instantly woke up, but she still told them that Napo was her friend. He lived on the rooftop of the building, but when everyone went to the roof, they found nothing there. Kosuke thought there was no such person as Napo at all. He believed Tanai was hiding something. That's why she kept coming to this building alone. The two of them quickly got into an argument. In the middle of their fight, a camera fell out of a nearby tent. Kosuke immediately recognized it as his grandfather's most treasured possession when he was alive. He told Tanai to hand it over, but no matter what, she refused. And so, Tanai ran straight toward the tall tower on the rooftop, but she slipped and fell. Kosuke tried to save her, but it was already too late. It was only then that the scene from the beginning of the story happened. At that moment, everyone stranded on the sea was extremely anxious, but just then, a mysterious figure suddenly appeared. It startled everyone. Tanai introduced the boy to the others, saying that this was Napo. He had lived in the apartment building a long time ago. It turned out that Napo really did exist. Tanai hadn't been lying. She told everyone that although they were floating on the sea now, every time she fell asleep, she would somehow wake up back at home. It was just like a dream. Since this usually lasted for a few days, she had prepared a large amount of food here, and even if they stayed here for several days, when they returned home, they would find that no time had passed at all. Kosuke didn't believe that everything Tanai said was just a dream, because everything he was feeling right now was real, tangible, and actually happening, so he urged everyone not to just sit and wait for rescue. At this point, there was still a rift between Kosuke and Tanai, because on the day his grandfather passed away, they had planned to visit him together, but Tanai was afraid she would be too sad to see her grandfather so ill, so she stood outside the door, unable to go in. Because of this, they argued. Angry, Tanai ran out of the hospital. Hearing the commotion, the grandfather told Kosuke to quickly go after her, but just after Kosuke left, his grandfather suddenly had a medical emergency and passed away. Kosuke never got to see him one last time, and so he blamed Tanai for that regret. From then on, their relationship began to grow distant. Life drifting on the sea was not easy. Every day, they could only eat instant noodles and potato chips. At first, they could adapt, but after a whole week of nothing but instant noodles, no one could stand it anymore. As their food supply dwindled day by day, everyone began to feel they would starve to death out here sooner or later. Their moods grew increasingly anxious. To survive, Kosuke stood on the rooftop every day, watching and hoping someone would come to rescue them, until one day, he suddenly spotted a mysterious building in the distance, slowly drifting toward them. It was an abandoned swimming pool complex. In search of new food, Kosuke made a rope out of electrical cables. Then he slid down the rope and reached the ruins. The swimming pool had been abandoned for many years. In Kosuke's memory, this place had long been demolished. Still, in order to fill their stomachs, they decided to first search for anything edible. On the second floor, they found a vending machine. Kosuke tried to smash it open to get what was inside, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break it. Tanai called him useless while picking up a TV nearby. The two of them then worked together, using the TV to smash the vending machine open. Just like that, they brought back a huge haul of food, and the rift between them began to fade. Tanai even returned the camera to Kosuke, because it was supposed to be the last gift from his grandfather before he passed away. Not long after, everyone spotted a town far in the distance from the rooftop. As long as the building drifted to that place, everyone would be saved. The group was overjoyed. They began to forget their current predicament, but as they drew closer to the town, something seemed to be growing from Napo's arm. Kosuke happened to see this. The next day, he gathered everyone and asked if Napo was hiding something. Kosuke had grown up in this building since he was little, yet he had never seen him before. But Napo claimed he had always lived here. Napo told them that his age should be the same as that of the abandoned building, because as soon as the building was completed, he had been living here. He watched many adults bring their children to live in the building. Over time, the adults grew old, and the children grew up. Then they left the building one after another. Later, new people would move in. The cycle repeated over and over. Napo didn't know how he had appeared in the first place, and he didn't know where he was meant to go. As he spoke, Napo suddenly showed them his arm. It was covered in plants. Everyone was startled. They demanded to know why they had suddenly ended up in the middle of the sea. But Napo was just as clueless as they were. A few more days passed. Food began running out again, and they were still far from the town. Luckily, a heavy rainstorm caused another building to drift toward them. Tanai recognized it at once. It was the department store she often visited as a child. There had to be plenty of food there, so Kosuke and Tanai found a bathtub to use as a boat. They planned to row over and look for food. This time, Napo insisted on going with them. The department store had been abandoned for many years. Like their own building, it had been scheduled for demolition, but this place seemed to hold many memories for Tanai. She went to the toy section. Suddenly, she looked very sad. She told Kosuke that on one of her birthdays, her parents had brought her here to buy a gift, but they ended up having a huge argument over what to buy. In the end, they bought nothing, and that very night, on Tanai's birthday, they decided to get a divorce. So whenever Tanai saw this department store, she would feel an inexplicable sadness. Just then, the mall began to shake violently. A large number of abandoned buildings had drifted in across the sea. They were all crashing into each other. Seeing that the department store was about to collapse, but the seawater behind them began to glow blue, Tanai turned to look in frozen place. The blue light formed the shape of a little girl. She was holding a doll and crying non-stop. This image was from the day her parents had fought. The day Tanai cried. As they left, the little girl began to slowly fade away. It seemed as if Tanai was saying goodbye to her unhappy memories of the past. They paddled the small boat back, but suddenly, the two buildings collided. Yuri lost her balance and fell in. After Tanai got ashore, she quickly climbed up with her agile movements. At the very moment Yuri was falling, Tanai swung her into the building, but she herself fell into the sea. She suddenly saw that the sand at the bottom of the sea seemed to have strong corrosive power. Everything it touched was completely eaten away. Kosuke jumped into the water to save her, but Tanai's foot was trapped by the sand. She couldn't move. Napo quickly pulled off Tanai's shoe. Only then was he able to push her up, but his own leg was rapidly wrapped by the sand. Napo struggled with all his strength and barely managed to break free. They were finally safe, but Tanai suddenly noticed that Napo's left leg had already been corroded away by the sand, and inside the broken leg, there was steel and concrete. The next moment, grass began growing on Napo's face. He looked just like an abandoned building. In an instant, countless blue lights radiated from Napo. They pulled everyone into his memories. It turned out he and the apartment building were one and the same. Whenever people lived here, memories would form, and those memories would create a kind of consciousness. That consciousness eventually took shape as Napo. He had watched Kosuke and Tanai grow up in this building. His favorite thing was their smiles. But when the building faced demolition, and people chose to move away, those memories gradually began to be forgotten. Because of that, Sooner or later, he too would disappear from this world and be transported to the place that belonged to him. If it weren't for Tanai and Kosuke holding on to their happy memories with their grandfather, Napo would have vanished long ago. But this time, something went wrong during the transport, and they accidentally got caught up in Napo's journey. Napo's words made everyone realize the truth. When a building is demolished, beings like Napo are sent to another place. That's why they had all ended up drifting on the sea. The building was Napo's vessel, but at that moment, the building was about to sink from the earlier collisions. Everyone had no choice but to take the small sailboat and leave. But after they boarded, Napo refused to come, because this was the place where his life began, and the place where it would end. He pushed the boat away, then turned and walked toward the building without looking back. Tanai suddenly thought of her late grandfather. She didn't want another goodbye, so she swam back without hesitation. No matter what, she was going to take Napo with her. But just then, the sky poured down heavy rain once again. A massive crash shattered everything. The building was tilting, about to be completely submerged. But suddenly, a Ferris wheel appeared on the sea. In an instant, a rope shot out and hooked onto the building. It was their friends coming back to save them. They had found an abandoned amusement park on the sea. They planned to use its buoyancy to pull the building up. Kosuke slid down the rope at full speed. Then he tied the Ferris wheel's cable tightly to the building. Somehow, the whole building really was pulled up. But just then, every cable on the Ferris wheel snapped. The building sank once again. The seawater had already covered the rooftop, and in just moments, it was gradually swallowed. Napo quietly held Kosuke and Tanai's hands. He didn't want to lose his friends. Memories of the past rushed through his mind. He saw Kosuke and Tanai growing up together. It was those happy memories that had always kept him going. So now, no matter what, he had to keep them alive. Suddenly, countless blue lights shot up into the sky. When Tanai and Kosuke opened their eyes again, Napo had become pure light, holding them tightly in his arms. After the dark clouds cleared, the sea grew calm again. They were finally safe. But in the distance, a small island suddenly appeared. Their other friends were safe too. Once everyone was reunited, the building slowly began drifting toward the island, but more moss began to grow on Napo's body. When they reached the island, they discovered it was made up of countless ruins. They were all abandoned buildings with no one to live in them, and each ruin had its own consciousness. These were all buildings people had left behind. Only then did Napo understand. This was his final resting place. All those forgotten memories would drift here across the sea. By now, Tanai's eyes were brimming with tears. She was the one who couldn't bear to part with Napo the most. But this journey had changed her. She was no longer the child who only knew how to cry. She would no longer be trapped in painful memories. After giving them a hug, Napo turned and jumped from the building. He returned to the home that belonged to him. After everyone waved goodbye, the building that carried their shared memories rose from the sea again. It was lifted into the sky by countless blue lights. In the next second, the blue lights turned into dazzling colors. When everyone came to their senses, they had already returned to the real world. Stepping out of the abandoned building, Tanai felt reluctant to leave, but she knew it was time to say goodbye to the past. Not long after, the building was demolished. The steel and concrete may have been cold, but it had once been the warmest home for Kosuke and Tanai. They went back to their usual lives. Only now, Tanai was more confident. The experiences of the past, like those fragments drifting on the sea, would one day become the steps beneath your feet, helping you stand taller. Don't stay trapped in memories forever. Take the warmth you've kept in your heart and move forward bravely. Every new footprint you leave is the best way to honor the past, and a bright mark you write for the future. The road ahead will have wind and rain, but it will also have starlight. When you set out, don't forget to carry the courage and strength you started with, because the roads you've walked, and the people you've loved, have already become the armor that protects you, so you can ride the waves of the sea of growth, and still look back with gentleness.